we're going to begin with an Italian teacher called Fibonacci. Hands up if you've heard of Fibonacci and Fibonacci sequence. Perfect. Okay. So, the Fibonacci sequence is a sequence of numbers, and they work like this. You start with 1, and you basically move on to another one, and then you add 2 numbers together to get the next number in the sequence. So 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 1 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 8, 5 plus 8 is 13, and so on. Now, something really interesting happens when you take one number in the Fibonacci sequence and you divide it by the number before it. So 13 divided by 8, or 8 divided by 5, you come up with a number, and it's this. 1.618. It's also known as phi. So that beautiful symbol there, that's the symbol phi. And this is a really important number in nature. 1.618 is a number that's been measured by a man called Manfred Clynes, who's a concert pianist. And he was so interested in science and emotion, he wanted to find a way of measuring emotions scientifically. And he found that when you measure love, the frequency you get is 1.618. Now, this becomes really significant when we apply it in this way. Now, if you imagine a piece of graph paper, and I'm going to draw a really scrappy version of a piece of graph paper. And you start to apply these numbers in the Fibonacci sequence to a piece of graph paper so that you draw across a number of squares as you see in the Fibonacci sequence. So you start with 1, and then you draw across 1 square, and then you draw across another 1 square, and then you draw across maybe 2 squares, and then you draw across maybe 3 squares, and then you draw across maybe 5 squares, and then 8, and so on. You end up drawing the most perfect, beautiful spiral. It's known as the golden spiral. It contains within it this number, but this geometry, this spiral, is so perfect. We see it in every aspect of life. We see it in how the DNA strands orbit each other in the nucleus of our cells. We see it in how our limbs unfurl as they grow. When you cut the brain in half that way, you see the golden spiral in the hemispheres. Wow, wow, exactly. You see this golden spiral in how leaves unfurl. When plants grow, that's how they unfurl. You see it in how sunflower seeds sit within a sunflower. You see it in how our planets orbit each other through the solar system. This spiral containing this number, which is love, exists in every part of nature. Now, how big a wow is that, do we think?
That's a big wow.
That's a pretty big wow. Okay, so I'm not going to go into it here, but there's also other aspects to this which involve sound and sound vibration. I've written about them in the book, but there's some even bigger, more amazing wow stuff that we know from music, and how this number musically can be measured to be the number of harmony. So when you're working with this in nature, what you're also talking about is harmony. Now, I'm going to talk about what happens when we apply this to our health. And I've written a theory that basically says that this number and this geometry is a code. It's a code for the body that says that when you're putting something in your body or on your body, if it contains this code that we see in nature, a code of love, then the body will accept it and it will use it. But if we put something in the body or on the body that doesn't contain this code, the body's immune system will be triggered because it thinks there's a foreign invader. The foreign invader doesn't have this code, it doesn't have this mathematics, it doesn't have this geometry, it can't be good for the body. And then the immune system will do what it can to expel that foreign object or to reject it. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that can look like in terms of medicine. And what I'm talking about when I'm talking about what we put in or on the body, I'm talking about medicine. I'm talking about food. I'm talking about what we drink. I'm also talking about what we put on our skin, because everything we put on our skin is absorbed. Pretty much everything we put on our skin is absorbed into the body through our skin. Our skin is porous. And somebody very wise once said to me, don't ever put anything on your skin that you wouldn't be prepared to put in your mouth, because it's the same thing. So this applies to everything, and everything that we breathe in as well goes into our body. And I'm going to share what I think happens with medicine. So I'm going to use the example of aspirin. So aspirin was my favourite experience when I was studying pharmacy by far, to make my own aspirin. That was a real high for me. Aspirin is actually, it's one, as with all pharmaceutical drugs, it's a replicated chemical. It's one chemical that's replicated and put into a tablet. Now, usually every pharmaceutical drug comes from a plant. There's usually some plant source somewhere down the line. So when you look at a plant usually has maybe 100 different plant chemicals working together. Now, if you take, there's a herb called meadowsweet. Now, meadowsweet contains, as one of its many, many plant chemicals, salicylic acid, which is the precursor for aspirin. And so you can use meadowsweet as you would use aspirin for pain relief. You can use it as an antipyretic to bring down temperatures and fevers. You can use it as an anti-inflammatory. But when you take aspirin, the most common side effect is having a stomach ulcer, if it's taken over a long period of time. The main reason that you would prescribe meadowsweet in the first place is to treat stomach ulcers. So what you have when you're looking at all those plant chemicals working together is you have a complete medicine. And my theory is that what happens is that those plant chemicals, those 100 or so plant chemicals in a plant, are arranged in this golden spiral. So when you put it into the body goes, oh yes, it's got this code. I can use it, I know it will bring me health. However, my theory is that what happens is that a pharmaceutical company will come along, isolate one of the 100 plant chemicals, take it out, give it to the body, and the body will go, well, I don't know what that is, because it doesn't have this code and it doesn't have this mathematics. And that's actually where I think the basis of side effects are. That side effects are caused by the body's immune system going, well, I don't recognise that. I don't recognise what you've just put in my body. Quick, I've got to get rid of it. And if you keep taking certain meds again and again and again, you will start to develop side effects. And I think it's because the immune system is overwhelmed trying to get rid of something it can't read. Now, the same is true, of course, with food, with pesticides, which are chemicals, synthetic chemicals that we're putting in the body. The same is true with GMOs, because what you're doing with GMO is you're taking the DNA, which has a perfect golden spiral, and you're changing it. So that doesn't really work for the body, I don't think. And the same is true of toiletries, cleaning products, anything that we breathe in. Because you're just replicating or using one tiny chemical again and again and again. And the body goes, oh, I don't know what that is, I don't know what to do with it, quick, get rid of it. So that, in essence, is the theory. There's lots of sound stuff around it as well, which is in my book. But I just wanted to share with you a little bit of some of the practical ways in which I think this really works when we apply it in our lives. So the first half of the book is about the theory, but the second half of the book is actually just a huge number of practical tips about steps you can easily take in your life to change what it is you're putting in your body or on your body. And I've brought with me a selection of things here. And I'm going to share with you two things in particular as tips. Now, in the book, I go into all sorts of things. I cover everything from toiletries through to school uniforms, through to what you use in your kitchen, to architecture and the use of cars. I'm not anti-car, by the way, but there's some interesting things to think about with cars. I talk about medicine, I talk about health in all sorts of ways. But I wanted to highlight one thing that I think people, or two things that I think people don't really know about that I think is really interesting. Now, I brought with me an example of a completely natural washing up liquid, and the reason I've done that is this. When I was 17 doing chemistry, I turned around to my chemistry teacher at the end of the class and I said, while we were doing the washing up of all the beakers and the equipment we've been using, I said, why aren't we using washing up liquid to wash up? And she said, because it takes 26 rinses to get the phosphates off glass. So scientists in science labs don't use washing up liquid. We live in a culture where we don't even rinse half the time. We just smear that washing up liquid with tea towel all over the plates and the crockery. Now, that to me is a fascinating concept. And if you're eating those synthetic chemicals, we can only imagine what that's doing in the body. And I've got lots of examples in the book about what we do know happens with some of those chemicals. But what we have is choice. And this is the most wonderful thing. When we think about health differently, we can say, oh, this can happen, and this thing does this terrible thing. But actually, awareness isn't a bad thing, because it gives us choice. And there are some amazing examples of companies that are producing amazing things. And I brought one here. This is Green Sense. And it's completely natural. But I wanted to highlight something really interesting. And just to give you an insight into how clever companies are in terms of their marketing, these wipes are made by a company that has trademarked the word pure. You can all come and have a look at this later because I'm going to leave them out. So you've got pure trademarked as a name. And I'm just going to read to you the ingredients in these wipes. Aqua, water. Butylene glycol, phenoxyethanol, hexyethylglycerol, propylene glycol, caprylic triglyceride, polysorbate 20, PEG 40, which we know causes health problems, hydrogenated castor oil, disodium cocoamphidiacetate, decyl glucoside, vitamin E, and tetrasodium EDTA, another substance we know causes health problems. And that's on a packet that says pure. So, my invitation to you is to do two things. One, read every single thing you buy. Everything. Do not assume that because it's got something on it that says, oh, it's something like pure or natural, that it is. Do your own research. Look up these chemicals on Google and add the word toxic on the end to find out what people know. It's fascinating. And then make different choices. But the second thing is detox. I promise if you do a 6-week detox and clear out every single artificial chemical in your home, that you will discover a new sense of taste and smell. You will be able to taste washing up liquid when you're visiting a friend's house.
Wow.
I promise you, you will be able to do that. And it will change your view on health and how you look after yourself and your family. And I know condoms. I talk about, in my book, I talk about condoms and sex toys. I've gone through almost the entire possibility of every aspect of your life. And and if I haven't, you can get in touch and tell me what I was. But these condoms are vegan condoms. And the reason I wanted to share with you these is because how many of you know what that white powder on condoms is? Talc, which we know causes ovarian cancer. It's not talc, but thank you. We know it causes ovarian cancer. Johnson & Johnson have been sued. We know it causes. Johnson & Johnson are an interesting company. I'm sure some of them have cocaine on them. Maybe not added by the company, but yes, I'm sure cocaine can be found. It's milk powder.
Oh, wow.
And as I put in the book, how many of you want that in your frou-frou, ladies? Like, if we know that if we know that milk is filled with pesticides, with vaccines, with antibiotics, with pus, that's what goes on top of condoms. And we think that's normal. Okay. So I wanted to write something that gave people choice. I wanted to educate people about the world around them, because the most amazing thing that happens when we have choice is we bring about change. The biggest change we're seeing at the moment is the explosion in veganism. You think you can't buy change in the world? look at the vegans. Vegans have completely transformed how we are living right now. The one step they need to go next, and that we need to go next, is to go organic, which is vegan and organic. Because a green smoothie ain't healthy if it's full of pesticides. But going vegan first is one step. And the other reason we need to start reading ingredients, and this isn't in the book because it's only becoming really topical now, is the orangutans. And if you start to read the ingredients, there's some really interesting lists going around Facebook, which we love, and other sites, which are listing all the different ways palm oil is cited in shampoos, in food. Because it won't just say palm oil. It will say all sorts of different things. Shampoos will say things like sodium palmitate. And the best thing we can do, I think, to help change our world is to change our shopping habits. It's to buy the change. It's not enough to be the change. We need to buy the change and vote with our money. And I think orangutans really deserve that from us right now. But that, in essence, is my book. That's my theory. If you want to find out more, I've brought a selection of samples of things here that you can check out. I've been a nerd. I've done it on your behalf. Yeah. I'm happy to share what I know.